Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan, and this is Beastmaster, entire movie franchise explained. The 1982 sword-and-sorcery fantasy film, The Beastmaster, was quite popular in the 1980s and 1990s, earning classic cult status for the film. Director Don Coscarelli, famous for his horror movies, also planned a future reboot of the film. At the same time, unfortunately, he also claimed that the original negatives of the movie were missing, and appealed to all fans to report any clue regarding the negatives. The movie is based on a science fiction novel by Andre Norton, centered on a Native American character, telepathically connected to genetically engineered animals in the future. The movie concentrates on Dar, the son of a king who grew up in another family, being haunted by a priest.
His unborn son will die.
The truth cannot be changed.
When he was an adult, his new father was murdered by savages. He suddenly discovered that he was able to communicate with animals and began his quest for revenge. But Coscarelli took back the storyline to the Bronze Age, which made Andre Norton quite unhappy. Though not really a favorite of the critics, the movie was trendy on HBO and TBS, where they played so often that watching HBO stood for, "Hey, Beastmaster's on," and TBS became known as the Beastmaster channel. The movie was succeeded by two low-budget sequels and a syndicated TV series in the 1990s, so join us as we explore them further. Before we get into today's explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks. Now, let's begin. The Beastmaster, 1982. The movie commenced in the kingdom of Erech, where the high-ranking priest Mayax was prophesied by the witches to die in the hands of the unborn son of the king Zed. The king became aware of this ghastly plan to sacrifice his unborn child, and banished the priest from his kingdom. One of the faithful witches to Mayax went to the palace, paralyzed the king and queen, and transferred the unborn child into a pregnant cow with her evil magic spells. Then, she killed the cow, took out the newborn baby, and prepared to sacrifice him by stabbing and then hurling the baby into the fire. Fortunately, a villager passing by realized the graveness of the situation and rescued the baby after slaughtering the evil witch. Then, he started raising the baby as his own son in the village of Emer, naming him Dar. His father stated that he was born with unforeseen power, and the burn mark on his palm, inflicted by the witch, would guide him in the path chosen by God. Years later, Dar had grown into a man, and was always followed by his faithful dog Kudo. One day, while practicing combat with his father, Dar encountered a fierce bear, and when he stood face to face with the bear, it seemed to communicate with him, and turned away without even hurting him. On another occasion, a group of barbarians called the June, allied by Mayax, attacked the village of Emer, and initiated a havoc massacre, slaying each and every villager. Dar was the lone survivor, as he was miraculously saved by Kudo, who was shot by an arrow and later succumbed to his injury. With a vengeful and enraged heart, Dar set out for the kingdom of Erech with his father's sword and bladed boomerang, accompanied by a golden eagle named Sharak. On his way, two ferrets stole his armor belt, and while chasing them, Dar slipped and fell into a pool of quicksand. Dar used his telepathic power to convince the ferrets to save him, while he named them Kodo and Poto and carried them along with him. Eventually, he saw some barbarians attacking and annoyed a Black Panther who was tied with a rope. Dar ambushed the cruel men with the help of the eagle and the ferrets, and ultimately saved the panther. Dar was happy to have the eagle as his eyes, the ferrets for their cunningness, and now the panther, who was named Rue, as his strength. Eventually, he met a slave girl named Kiri and became infatuated with her. While following her, he arrived at a village where he was surrounded by a strange half-bird, half-human race who dissolved their prey. These people worshipped eagles, and hence spared Dar when they found out that Sharak was his pet. Finally, Dar reached the kingdom of Erech, only to find that Mayax had taken total control of the kingdom and was religiously sacrificing children into a fire in front of the villagers, who were restraining from protesting by Mayax's angry men. Dar managed to save the second child from being sacrificed into the fire, as he used his power to convince Sharrak to swoop down on the child and carry him away to safety. When Dar returned the child to his parents, he was informed that Kiri was also meant for a sacrifice. Meanwhile, Mayax discovered through his magical spell that Dar was the lost child of the imprisoned King Zed and sent his people to kill him. Luckily, Dar escaped with the inevitable death. He was saved by Ru and was joined by King Zed's younger son, Tal, and his bodyguard, Seth, in avenging the evil Mayax. Dar found out that Kiri was not some ordinary slave girl, but the king's niece. Through his telepathic connection to Sharrak, Dar discovered that 5 women, including Kiri, were being taken for sacrifice. Dar and Seth together saved Kiri from the priest and started planning to save the king and free Arak from the clutches of Mayax. While Seth left to gather more forces to fight, Dar, Kiri, and Tal secretly entered the city of Arak. After great difficulties, they managed to find the imprisoned king. But with a magical spell on the ring worn by Tal, Mayax and his witches were already aware of their presence and attacked them. Somehow, Dar and his team managed to get away from Mayax and the witches, as they escaped through the tunnel and found their way to safety. The king decided to attack Mayax and take back Arak and his position, but Dar disagreed, as he knew how ferocious Junes could be. The king, enraged by the disagreement with Dar, referred to him as a coward and banished him from the group. As the king and Seth were discussing their plans for an attack, Seth realized that the magic eye on Tal's ring was conveying all the information to Mayax. He finally destroyed the ring and threw it into the fire. In the morning, Dar was informed by a friend that everyone, including the king, had been captured by Mayax and taken to the temple for sacrifice. With Seth and Tal, Dar managed to reach the temple and initiated a fierce combat with the evil priests, while Mayax revealed Dar's relationship with Zed before he killed Zed by slitting his throat. Eventually, Dar stabbed Mayax. However, when he was carrying Kiri, Mayax pulled the knife out and was about to kill Dar when Koda sacrificed his life and caused Mayax to fall into the sacrificial flame. Soon, they found out that the Junes were approaching Arak for an attack. They set up a huge trap for the Junes and managed to slaughter most of them, while Dar, after a fierce battle, managed to ambush their chieftain. The remaining Junes were consumed by the Birdman, who came to help Dar. The next day, Seth invited Dar to be the next king, but Dar refused, explaining that Tal would be a much better king. He set off into the wild with Kiri, Ru, Sharrak, and Pudo, who had given birth to 2 baby ferrets, following the path of new adventures. The movie got a mixed response from the critics, while crossing $14 million on its initial release. Mark Singer starred as the titular hero and acted quite well, while the remaining cast managed to support him in a basic way. Josh Milrad was nominated for the Young Artist Award for the Best Young Supporting Actor in a Movie. Some critics felt that the film was slightly too long, as it dragged on for 20 minutes after the main protagonist was ambushed in the climax, while many others felt that better sets and clever shots could have improved the standard of the film. By large, the film was enjoyable and received extensive success on cable networks. Beastmaster 2, Through the Portal of Time, 1991. In the very beginning, the audience was notified that after the death of King Zed, darkness had grasped the land of Arak, as the evil warlord Arklon had enslaved the people with his unholy magic. Their only hope lay with the rebelling forces of the Beastmaster. Dar, who was unfortunately captured by Arklon's men and presented before the council for sentencing. Dar was found guilty of being a leading rebel to overpower the great Arklon, and was condemned to death. Before he could be beheaded at the guillotine, his animal companions, however, attacked the army men and freed Dar. After killing all the men accompanying Arklon, when Dar confronted Arklon, he threatened him with a deadly magic laser weapon, which would have been fatal to Dar. had Sharrak not attacked Arklon's eyes, letting Dar escape with all of his animal companions. Eventually, Arklon and his men ambushed a clan of rebels, completely sparing a sorceress, Ursa, who claimed to possess a mysterious power, capable of making Arklon as powerful as a god. Meanwhile, as Dar traveled through the forest, he encountered a strange witch-like creature, who happened to be his father's sister, and she told him that she was being punished due to the evil magic of her past. She also informed Dar that before him, another unborn child was taken away from Zed, whose mind was corroded by the evil priests. The responsibility of finding and destroying him before the autumn solstice lay on Dar, or else mankind would not survive on Earth. Meanwhile, the sorceress took Arklon through a dimensional portal where a world existed on a parallel plane as their own world, and the parallel world was LA. The sorceress showed Arklon a particular place where a neutron detonator was preserved, capable of destroying the entire continent.
Why do you show me such things? These are nothing but illusions and pictures.
The movie then shifted to a scene in LA where a girl, Jackie Trent, is seen speeding her car and being followed by 2 policemen. When the 3 vehicles are supposed to crash into a wall, the 3 cars cross the parallel dimension instead and reach the spot where Arklon, Ursa, and the soldiers were present. The 2 policemen assumed that they had stumbled onto a shooting set for some old-age film, but when the soldiers actually attacked them, they assumed that the people were lunatics. They jumped back to LA through the wall, leaving their patrol cars behind, while Jackie drove away with her car, witnessing all the commotion. After a while, her car stops as it's run out of fuel, and she was forced to spend the night in the desert, totally confused about her whereabouts. In the morning, she met Dar and his companions and assumed they belonged to a circus. Without any option, she joined Dar on his quest and headed westward while getting acquainted with him. But Arklon's soldiers managed to grab Jackie and take her back to Arklon and Ursa, where Arklon promised to free her if she would ensure his access to the neutron detonator. Jackie promised him, and they entered the world of LA. Eventually, Dar followed them and also crossed over into our dimension. And it was at that moment when he raised his hand. Arklon, upon seeing the symbol on his hand, realized that he and Dar were brothers. But Arklon moved on, leaving Dar stranded behind, and Jackie took them to be dressed in appropriate attire, while the cops captured Dar and Rue after tranquilizing them. Taking advantage of Arklon in the dressing room, Jackie ran out quickly and reached home, while Arklon vandalized the shop and soon left. While the cops were interrogating Dar, he somehow managed to flee from the police station, and luckily was picked up by Jackie in her car and taken to her home. Meanwhile, Arklon had hypnotized the appropriate person and retrieved all the information about acquiring the detonator, while Jackie and Dar went after him. Arklon and Ursa forged false identities and entered the restricted area where the detonator was being kept. After seizing it, they left the place. But wicked Arklon withdrew all of Ursa's memories before forsaking her. Consequently, Jackie and Dar were joined by Ursa in the ensuing chase sequence. As Arklon was about to cross the time portal, Dar successfully stopped him, but he managed to escape to the city again by causing destruction with his laser wand. A few policemen chased Arklon's vehicle, while some others chased Dar, who was saved by Jackie. A confused Arklon landed in the zoo, and then shot Sharrak as he was following him, and was also responsible for the scar on his face.
Asshole.
In the following combat, Dar managed to kill Arklon, and the military general defused the detonator with only 1 second left. Dar bid farewell to Jackie, leaving Kodo and Podo with her, and returning to his world, Sharrak and Rue, to find people traveling from distant places to offer pilgrimage to the Porsche that was left behind by Jackie as a mark of God. Mark Singer was back in the sequel, with his perfectly toned body appropriate as the Beastmaster. The film also stars Kari Wurr as Jackie, the cute and spunky LA girl, though Wings Hauser as Arklon didn't quite stand up to his standard. Jim Wynorski was meant to direct the film, and also wrote the screenplay, with R.J. Robertson for Sylvia Tabbitt, who was the producer. But at the last moment, Tabbitt decided to direct the movie. Very few critics gave positive feedback to the film, as most people thought it was not funny or clever enough to overcome its silliness. Although Singer was appreciated by most critics. Like its prequel, Beastmaster, it was broadcasted regularly on cable television stations all across America.
Your aim is poor for somebody with 3 eyes.
Die, mortal!
Beastmaster 3, The Eye of Braxus, 1996. The evil warlord and sorcerer Aegon used a magical ceremony to temporarily regain his youth by sacrificing young prisoners, and told his servant Maldor that he must seize the eye of the Dark Lord Braxus, which was possessed by the young King Tal, in order to regain his immortal youth and his kingdom fully. He also claimed that his Crimson Warriors were scouring the land to locate King Tal and the Eye of Lord Braxus. A family traveling through the woods were attacked by a group of thugs when Dar and his animal friends came to their rescue. They narrated the tyranny of Lord Aegon, who compelled them to seek refuge from King Tal, who was portrayed as a kind and just leader. The family visited the royal encampment of King Tal, who was ecstatic to see Dar. They were informed about Lord Aegon, a powerful sorcerer who had conquered their kingdom, Ombeth, looking for the stronghold of Lord Braxus to achieve the power that he needed to rule the world. King Tal decided to leave at dawn with Seth, his powerful counselor, and a group of powerful warriors to liberate the land that was occupied by Lord Aegon. At nightfall, the Crimson Warriors bombarded the encampment and kidnapped King Tal. On his way to rescue Tal, Dar was confronted by the Crimson Warriors, where he was joined by Seth and his animal companions to shatter the villains. Meanwhile, Tal revealed an amulet given to him by his father, which he swore to protect with his life. Though Tal never discovered its purpose, he presented half of it to Dar to share the responsibility and remind him of the bond between them. King Tal was taken before Lord Aegon, who seized the amulet and ordered to imprison King Tal. Aegon snatched the amulet as it was the key to opening the tomb of Lord Braxus, only to realize that it was only a half of the whole amulet. Following King Tal's trail, Seth, Dar, and his animals lost their way in the supernatural fog created by the Crimson Warriors. They were helped by Sharrak and found their way out of the fog. Soon, they encountered 4 men, accompanying a woman who tried to attack them, but fled as they realized that they were no match for Dar and Seth.
What are you doing?
All right?
Oh, you idiot.
The enraged woman had informed them that they were not thugs, but her warriors, and introduced herself as Shada,
I am Shada, a Keshite warrior of the 1st rank.
a member of the warrior tribe. At first, she refused to show them the way to Ombeth, but after noticing Dar's amulet, she changed her mind and decided to show them the way. That night, Shada attempted to steal the pendant, but Dar grabbed her hand, only to find that the pendant was missing. He found it in Kodo and Pudo's bag, and finally placed it around Ruth's neck for protection. Back in the fortress, Aegon investigated Tal about the other half of the amulet, and, on refusing, Aegon put him in the torture chamber. In the morning, Shada misled them to fall into the trap of native tribal men, while Rue was captured in a net. Shada approached the trapped Rue, obtaining the amulet, and left with it and Dar's sword. Dar was about to be shot with a poisoned arrow, but he was saved by a thug, who was sparred by Dar earlier. The thug informed them that Shada worked for Lord Aegon, and was looking for an amulet, which was actually the Eye of Lord Braxus. Dar and Seth freed Rue, and went looking for Shada, with Sharrak leading the way. They captured Shada, who told them that she had no choice but to steal the amulet for Lord Aegon, or else she would also be sacrificed like the other people of Ombeth.
Come on, release me now. I did my end of the bargain.
Not yet.
Meanwhile, Aegon retrieved Tal's memory and learned that he had given the other half of the amulet to his brother Dar, and sent soldiers to find him, while Dar, Seth, and Shada arrived outside the city. Shada tried to escape, and tripped and fell before a cobra. Dar saved her life, and let her go, as she was not trustworthy. They headed towards a gypsy camp, hoping to enter Ombeth with them, and met Bay, a chief acrobat, as the camp's leader, Morgana. Seth recognized Morgana, the witch, as his former lover, and wanted to leave, but Dar convinced him to talk to her for help. Morgana agreed to help them enter the city, and used her powers to transform Rue into a cat, Sharrak into a dove, and the ferrets into mice. Eventually, Morgana summoned the Crimson Warriors, and handed over Dar to them, as she thought that it was the best way to enter the city. Dar is handed over to Aegon, who grabs the amulet and hangs him over a pit with wild animals, from where he is saved by Shada. Morgana, Seth, and Bay enter the stronghold, and meet Dar and Shudda, where she transformed the animals back. And while Dar and Shudda went to free Tal, the rest confronted the Crimson Warriors. After freeing Tal, Dar requested Shudda to carry him to safety, while he was determined to confront Aegon himself. Meanwhile, Bay was captured by Aegon to be sacrificed by Aegon. Dar managed to stop Bay from being sacrificed, but Aegon trapped Sharrak in a cage and compelled Dar to surrender. He placed the whole amulet together, causing Lord Braxus to take over his body and transform his own shape. Braxus then killed Maldor and the other guards and started summoning fellow creatures from the pit. Dar managed to rip off the eye and destroyed it while pushing him into the pit.
The eye, Dar! Destroy it!
In the end, Tal recovered with Morgana's potion and dismissed Seth from his charges, asking him to join Dar in his quest to help the people in need. Dar kissed Shudda goodbye, as she decided to stay back as a guardian to Ombeth, and Bay desperately wanted to join Dar and Seth on their quest, to which Dar reluctantly agreed, and they rode off. Mark Singer, though aged, appeared quite charismatic, but the actions of others were a mixture of barely decent to some terrible moments. A major drawback of the Beastmaster movies was the clarity of continuity. For example, Rue was a Black Panther in the first movie, a tiger in the second, while a lion in the third film. As well, Koro had died in the first film, yet he appeared in the second film where they were left behind in LA, and they were back again in the third film. Change of directors might have been the reason, as the third film was directed by Gabriel Beaumont. The film would have been rather entertaining if the special effects and camera editing were done properly, but if anyone had started watching the sequels, then one should complete all of them.
Last of his tribe. He is also called Beastmaster.
Beastmaster television series. There was a television series named Beastmaster that aired from 1999 to 2002. The series was loosely based on the original movie Beastmaster, which in turn was loosely based on the Andre Norton's novel. The series aired 66 episodes, completing 3 seasons. The series was nominated for an Open Craft Award under the category of cinematography, as well as a Saturn Award for Best Syndicated Television Series, but did not win any of those awards. In the series, Dar, played this time by Daniel Goddard, was presented as the last survivor of his tribe. He had lost his love, Kira, played by Natalie Jackson Mendoza, and had wandered everywhere looking for her, while protecting the animals and needy people.
I will find you, Kira.
His friends, Tao, played by Jackson Rain, a fearful young man, but also a scholar and medicine man, helping Dar on his quest. Dar met another orphaned warrior named Arena, who became a faithful companion of Dar. All of them were the last survivors of some lost tribes. This series also starred Monica Schnarr as the Sorceress, Graham Bond as the Ancient One, Emily DeRavin as the Forest Demon, and many more.
Do you love him?
The human antagonist was played by Stephen Grimes. Mark Singer, the original Beastmaster from the movie, was seen in the first season as Dardanus, the spirit warrior who helped Dar on his quest. The story of the series was about the advanced technology-oriented world being threatened by the supernatural powerful Balsifer, the Dark One, who also killed Dar's father, King Elder. In order to defeat Balsifer, Dar had to locate and unite his entire family, who had been transformed into animals to hide from Balsifer. Balsifer's agent on Earth was King Zad, who was in constant enmity of the King Donan. Dar had the ability to communicate with the animals, and was dedicated to protecting the wild animals of the world. Thus, Dar, Tao, and Arena are in conflict with any person or tribe who mistreat the animal kingdom. One of the interesting themes of the series is the conflict between nature and the progress of technology. Though this concept is ideal for today's generation, it appeared less critical for the timeline of the series, which was centuries ago, when nature dominated science. The series was quite action-oriented in the beginning, but somehow lost its tone in the latter parts. As the series was filmed in Australia, there was plenty of wildlife footage that were quite mind-blowing.
How about a little help? Come on. You two got me into this, now get me out.
Future of the franchise. After 38 years, writer-director Don Coscarelli has acquired back the rights to his original make of Beastmaster. Though the original negative of the classic film is still missing, Coscarelli is desperate to get it back, and he has launched a website appealing to the audience to reveal any clue regarding it. But the good news is that the original copyright of the screenplay of Beastmaster has been reclaimed by the initial creator, and is hopeful for a reboot of the film to entertain the worldwide audience. There is a generation of fans to the original movie who would heartily welcome the reboot of the sword and sorcery classic that will hopefully happen very soon. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to send a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. For marvelous videos, I'm Rylan. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks for watching.
I'm gonna name you Kodo. You get a name too, Podo.